All right, all right. Welcome to WTF, the rise of the tech broligarchy. I'm Stephen Renderos, the executive director at Media Justice, coming to you live on Zoom and streaming across all the social media channels, at least the ones that we haven't been banned from.
And I'm Ramsha Sajid, Senior Learning Specialist here at Media Justice. Thank you for joining us for the final installment of our seven-part series. Over the course of this political education series, we've gone over a lot of things, but in particular, who are the main players in the tech broligarchy and what do they want? How are they partnering with this administration to advance its agenda? And what are the crises that we need to be paying attention to?
That's right. And let's take a quick minute to break down the impact of this seven-part educational series. When we originally set out for this political education series, our goal was to reach at least 1,000 people. And I got to be honest with you, like we're a little surprised by how many people we've actually been able to reach through this political education series. And across all the many things that we've done, we've exceeded that goal. Like 127,506 people have been touched through this political education series. These are the folks who have been viewing recordings of the series and joining us live, as you all are right now, engaging with the posts on social media, liking and commenting our WTF content. We cultivated an audience just in these Zooms of over 1,358 people who have tuned in each week, and not including today's webinar. So you'll see on the screen the little breakdown of these numbers. And yeah, this is like too exciting. We've heard great feedback from a lot of people. And it's been amazing to hear folks like shout us out, just the positive feedback, give us critical feedback as well. It's really helped to make this series exactly it's become.
Yeah, thank you even for that. The power and impact of this series has just been astounding. And for today's lessons, we're going to talk a little bit about two things. First, what have we learned about the tech oligarchy over the first 100 days of the Trump administration? And secondly, what our movements can do moving forward. And stay tuned because we have a brand new tool that you're not going to want to miss. Today, our team is releasing a brand new resource called WTF, The Rise of the Tech Broligarchy Toolkit. And we created this for you all to help the conversation move beyond our webinar series and into your communities. So stay tuned until the end for that link. And whether you're watching on Zoom today or you're following us on social media, please leave a comment either on our live streams or here in Zoom of where you're watching from and what made you tune in today.
Yeah, so where are folks tuning in from? Go ahead and drop it in the chat here for those of you joining us on Zoom. It'd be great to know where are folks coming from. I saw Ocean View, Ocean Park, Washington earlier. What's up? Shout out to the Northwest. Where are y'all dialing in from? Port Angeles. We got Tennessee in the house, rural West Virginia. That's what's up. We got Mexico City up in here, northern Idaho, Bay Area, Ohlone Land. Shout out to the Bay, the Kingdom of Hawaii. What's up? Cambridge, Massachusetts, Arlene from Minnesota. All right, we got some folks from Durham. We got Canada in the house. We got Burque. We got La Paz, Bolivia. That's what's up. Northeast Wisconsin, Seaville, New Jersey. Keep them coming, y'all. This is super exciting. The Catskills Mountains. Beautiful. Oh, amazing. The Yucatan. What's up, Talila? Yeah, Johnstown, Pennsylvania, Lower Hudson Valley, New York City. Amazing. Amazing. This is amazing. All right. So I'm gonna keep rolling this along. Um, we decided to name this series WTF because, let's be honest, there is no other way to react to the onslaught of news that we've seen since Trump took office, right? Um, I don't know if y'all remember, but like the White House literally became a Tesla infomercial at one point. And since then, we've also had just like a nearly like nonstop set of daily headlines like federal workers from many different agencies like the Federal Trade Commission or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau getting purged, folks at the IRS getting purged. We've been watching investigations and lawsuits against tech broligarchs get dropped while a tech-enabled immigration system is out there rounding up students and migrants. So a lot has happened over these last 100 days. And the only way to really describe it on a daily basis is what the F. I thought I would have a bleep button with me, but I don't have a bleep button, so I'm not going to curse. But what the F? And that's why we call this series WTF.
That's right. And since some of these WTF headlines have been, well, seriously unbelievable, we wanted to start today's episode with a little game. This is something we call WTF, real or fake. Here's how y'all are going to play. We're going to show a headline on the screen, and you all will answer a Zoom poll on whether you think these headlines are real or fake. And if you're watching on social media, feel free to post a comment. Here comes the first headline. It says the five biggest corporations represented at Trump's inauguration could save $75 billion from one tax break before Congress. Feel free to start populating whether you think this is real or fake. We'll take a minute just to let folks put in their answers. Is this real or fake?
Okay. And if you're watching on social media again, just drop a comment. Do you think this headline is real or fake? All right.
All right, let's see the results. Okay,
It's
if you, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, okay, 96%. 96%. Well, here's the answer. In fact, it's real. I don't know if y'all remember, but the tech oligarchs who had their coming out party at inauguration, y'all might remember they paid a fee to get into that inauguration, about $1 million they had to donate to Trump to show up on inauguration. Well, now those same oligarchs are coming back and they want a $75 billion reward. And here's how they're trying to do it. They're actually lobbying to retroactively restore a tax break that would let them immediately write off like all investment costs. This is things like, research that they pay for or developing new technology, like anything they invest in developing new tech, they want to be able to write off. And they want to do it going back to 2022. So if Congress actually restores this tax break, what has essentially happens is like Amazon's corporate tax rate would go from like 25% to -4%. Tesla, who already their corporate tax rate is zero, like literally zero, would drop down to -22%. And if you might be wondering what the hell does a negative rate mean, it means that they don't just like pay nothing, they literally get money back from the government. It's like a straight up handout. Okay. You ready for another one? I think so. Here's another one. Trump's war on immigrants wouldn't be possible without big tech. Trump's war on immigrant wouldn't be possible without big tech. Do y'all think this is a real headline? Go ahead and answer in the Zoom poll. We can give you just a minute here to like answer. And I'd love to also invite those of you who are watching on social media to do so on a comment or a chat. All right. Let's see. Give us just a couple more seconds to hit a little critical mass. All right, I think we should show the results. Rumsha, what is this? Is it real or fake?
All right, well, 97% of you were correct. This is real. This article from The Nation talks about how President Trump's sweeping promise of mass deportations are both digital and physical. Physical in the sense that it expands deportation capacity across the US and El Salvador, and digital in terms of gaining access to people's data and extracting it.
All right, cool. All right, we got one last one for y'all before we move on. This is what the headline says, if I can see it pop up in the screen. We're going to say, all right, cool. The Federal Aviation Administration officials are ordered to find money for Musk's Starlink. If you don't know what Starlink is, it's a company that Elon Musk owns that launches satellites into the atmosphere. And it's the biggest satellite company in the world. But the headline here says the Federal Aviation Administration is ordered to find money to pay for a contract with Elon Musk's Starlink. What do you all think? Is this a real headline or is this fake? All right, let's see what we got. Gonna give y'all a few more seconds. Oh, it's ended. What do we got? Is this real?
All
Let's
right.
see.
89% of you said that this was real. And in fact, it is real. The Federal Aviation Administration directed staff to locate tens of millions of dollars for a Starlink deal. Can y'all believe that? A public federal agency working to make sure a billionaire gets his payday. In an already alarming move for Elon Musk to control the internet as we know it. Yikes.
Yeah, yikes indeed. For those of you who answered real for all of those headlines, you got all three 100% right. So you probably noticed a little pattern here. We can't make up these headlines, even if we tried. Um, so moving on, I think, before we started this WTF series, we knew that we'd be stepping into the whole headlines. And in fact, like we actually had a whole bunch more that we wanted to get into, but for the sake of time and for the sake of actually getting into conversation with our guests, like we opted to cut some of those out. But let's be real, there's just been a lot of bad things that have been going on. And we knew that tech oligarchs in particular would be at the center of a lot of the bad stuff. We knew that there'd be people like you trying to make sense of it and making sense of it, not just as like a thought exercise, but in order for us to be able to do something about it. And what we've seen over the first 100 days, millions of people have mobilized to oppose the actions of this administration and the tech billion to support them. There were the May Day demonstrations that occurred in all 50 states, the Tesla takedown movement that has generated protests at almost every single, like 275 Tesla showrooms across the country. Take on top of that the women's marches, the protests to end genocide. The point is, like, we are in a moment of mass mobilization where people are showing a willingness to hit the streets and make their voices heard.
Exactly. A common theme across all of these mobilizations is not people just being upset at the actions of the Trump administration, but also people being really angry at Elon Musk, the world's richest person whose actions over the last 100 days has hurt us all while using our tax dollars to make himself and his tech billionaire friends richer. And that's creating some fractures among the people who have been hardline supporters of Trump. One fascinating case that we saw of people fighting back for their public tax dollars is actually in a small Republican town in Texas called San Marcos. San Marcos, Texas recently uncovered that $4.4 million of taxpayer money from their town of just 70,000 people was sent to fund the genocide of Palestinians. The San Marcos City Council voted on a resolution to redirect those funds back to their city. Stephen, what sticks out to you about this story?
Yeah, I mean, a few things, but like, I think first, like, let's not pretend that this town in Texas did this because, like, they believe in a free Palestine. But I think, like, what's true is there's a growing realization that, like, our tax dollars should not go to fund warfare and genocide abroad. Not when, like, our communities desperately need these resources. And again, I think that's a real break from what Trump and his tech broligarchy believe. In the last like 100 days, we've seen massive like military contracts be granted to many of these tech figures, like Anduril Industries, who's run by Palmer Luckey. They secured a $99 million contract with the Department of Defense, and have like this $22 billion contract to build headsets for the US Army. In February, let's see, in March, they actually secured a $642 million contract with the Marines. And you also see this like in the way that there's been a push to build data centers all over the country. And we talked about that in the last webinar. And that's like a lot of the like push behind it is to build the kind of data infrastructure that helps use artificial intelligence for the military. So, an AI is becoming the next like big global arms race. And so tech bros like Palantir's Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, and even former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, they're pouring millions into AI military tech. So it's telling that like a city like San Marcos would be willing to push back as its money is being spent to like fund warfare and genocide.
For sure. And that's not the only pushback we've seen, right? Like one of the most potent forms of people power we've seen in the first 100 days of Trump is actually mutual aid, especially supporting migrant communities. We've seen across the country community resistance to ICE raids by community-led ICE monitoring initiatives, people sharing in local signal groups information to help families evade deportations and know your rights trainings.
That's right. That's right. It's been like inspiring to see like so many people being willing to like fight for each other. Students willing to like protest college campuses despite being targeted by the Trump administration. And honestly, it's who's organizing has also been key to like helping free Rumeysa Ozturk and Mohsen Madawi from ICE detention. We've seen law firms that are buying Trump's orders to comply with like DEI executive order and are instead like pushing back against this administration's agenda. There is like a growing momentum of people who are fighting back. And this organizing is proving that it can resist and it can win. So, as we transition into connecting with our amazing guest speakers, I want to convey, I think, like one bit of like a sober reality. Like, despite the millions that have hit the streets, despite the many small and the many large rebellions that have taken place over the last 100 days, the new people who have mobilized to take an action, the reality is we still need a bigger version of us in order to stop the version of them, Trump and his tech billionaire, and what they're trying to do. While they like attempt to like fundamentally reshape our society in ways that help consolidate their power and their wealth in a few people, we need to be building a larger and larger movement that can meet this moment with the kind of resistance that puts us on a trajectory towards a liberated future. So, in other words, like this is a moment where we need to be building. So this last webinar of the WTF series is less about what they are doing and more about what we need to be doing. And I'm really thrilled, like, and really humbled actually, to welcome someone who has been at the forefront of building people power in some of the most challenging conditions. So I want to invite in my friend and comrade, Ashley Henderson, and I'll say a couple words about Ashley. Ashley is the former co-executive director of the Highlander Research and Education Center, an institution that has been a backbone of the Southern movement building for generations. Um, she's a brilliant strategist in the movement for Black Lives, a leader with the front lines, and someone who deeply understands what it means to organize when the odds seemed super stacked against us. So, Ashley, it is so good to have you with us today, and I've really been looking forward to this conversation. How you doing, comrade?
I'm good. What's up? I mean, first of all, just gratitude to the whole Media Justice fam and our illustrious hosts. You all, even just in the last few minutes, have given us so much. So I'm really grateful to be amongst you.
Thank you, Ashley. Uh, you know, Anytime we're talking about trying to build a resistance struggle against anything, and obviously we're here talking about fighting, tech-enabled authoritarianism, it feels really important and almost necessary to ground that in the South. It's in this moment, in this current moment, like a place where the tech bros are moving to, right? It's where they are
Right.
capturing land, they are launching rockets from, like it is where they're doing a lot of damage. But historically, it's also a place that, given some of the conditions that I think we're struggling with, those have been the conditions,
That's
right?
right.
Um, and I guess it's under these conditions, like in the South, that people have been building movements and building power in for a really long time. And some of those conditions that I think I've been thinking about, obviously recently we saw the news of the burning of the Claiborne Temple in Memphis, and I was, obviously when I saw it immediately, I thought about but it happened years ago at the Highlander Research Center, experienced something very similar, right? Um, and this is the kind of like repression and political violence that we are that the South has lived in for many years and still built power within. And so I guess like I bring up the example of the Claiborne Temple and Highlander not as like hyperbole, but really I bring it up because the South has been knowing like what time it is. And so for those of us who are new to this, like what can the South teach us about what it means to build power in these conditions?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really critical question. And folks that know me or have been to the mass calls or a Highlander training and homecoming or an Infobl meeting, whatever, wherever we have crossed paths, you've heard me say that as goes the South, so goes the nation is not an opinion, right? It is a fundamental fact. We know that, right? We know that both if the camera is pointed at the South because of the challenges that we face and the states where we live that are, MAGA super majorities on the state level, or whether it's if the camera is being pointed to us as the solutionaries to the problems that suffering and disproportionately impacted communities are facing, right? So there's a way that I can answer this question, Stephen, where I tell you about all the terrible things that are happening to people down south, right? Where I say, when my friends in national movements talk about we need to defend democracy and we need to fight for it, people down south might say, for what? Like, it's been a democracy and we haven't seen the benefits of it. Or we might say things like we need to say that we need to prioritize fighting for the rule of law and, defend the Constitution and such. And many of my people will be like, well, we were never really included in that thing already, right? So there's a way to again to center the problem or to talk about the solution. So I'm gonna choose
Mm,
instead of romanticizing the problem or the power of the right wing, which I actually think is pretty lacking in innovation. And focus on the really incredible opportunities that we have if we, like good Southerners, imagine the incredibly impossible things that become possible because we work together and we center moving, not just at the speed of trust, because honestly, we don't have time for that right now, but
mm,
moving at the speed of strategy and relationship, right? So why I feel excited about centering the South is because we've been whooping fascist ass for as long as there's been a South, a US South, right? We've been actually contesting for power. And the story of the South actually isn't that we've always been the biggest losers that are disproportionately oppressed more than everybody else, though there is a way to tell that story. It's actually that we build power successfully and then minority rule punches us in the teeth. And then we
mm,
get up and we build more power. And then minority people that want minority rule continue to try to fight us. And so actually what happens if we center the story around us, right? What we find is that we actually are really good at building power. We are
mm,
really good at taking advantages of the weaknesses in the right wing, the authoritarian, the fascist, the white nationalist, the Christian nationalist bloc, taking advantage of those weaknesses and building our power. And just because we win doesn't mean they get voted off the island and don't contend for power again. The lesson is that we have to be thinking strategically about how to protect and defend our communities before, during, and after the risky tactical interventions that we're asking to take in this political climate, right? The
mm,
last thing that I'll say about that, because I know we got infinite more questions and awesome speakers to hear from, is that it also feels important to me in this moment where the South is the largest geographic region in the United States. And that's true even if we don't include the Southwest, which I think have more in common with the South than anywhere else, or the places that
that's
call
right.
themselves the Midwest, but actually are below the Mason-Dixon. Shout out to my friends in Missouri. I would offer that the South is the largest geographic region in the United States, even if we don't include those places or the other places impacted by the Great Migration. It's the largest geographic region, even without those places. It's where the highest concentration of Black folks live. It's where the highest concentration of LGBTQ plus people live. And even if it wasn't all of that, knowing that we have to build across the multiracial working class, it's where the highest concentration of working class people, low income folks that are being paid poverty wages are concentrated, right? And
Mm,
so knowing that, it just seems if we're going to practice what we preach around our value of centering the most disproportionately impacted people, then that would have to influence our strategy. And I frankly believe that as we continue to block and build through this big, broad front of people that are against fascism and for democracy, like the actual practice of democracy, we can't get there if we leave behind such huge swaths of the most directly impacted people. So to me, if you can't do it because it's right, do it because it's the only way to win.
That's right. And it's the real opportunity to build that bigger we.
That's right.
It's there.
That's right.
Um, and I'm curious, Ashley, like, because I think speaking of some of these, like the conditions that I think we've been navigating and exploring throughout the series, like Meta's moving into the South. They're building data centers in Louisiana. You got Data Center Alley in Northern Virginia. You got rockets being launched from Florida and from Texas, South Texas. Um, and it's the place where, as you're saying, like the largest swath of people that need to be captured and put into a united front that's fighting for pro-democracy, like that's where the opportunity is. And how do we do that in a way that is not like naive in what is possible? So I'm curious, like for those of us, and like many of us are like Media Justice is the national organization, we're looking at like how we can flank and support our comrades down in the South, and like how do we stay strategic in building in the right way, um, and not in a way in which we have naive optimism about what's possible and disconnected from like the reality of the conditions that folks have to contend with day to day. I guess what would be your directive to us around how we do that, how we do the building in the right way?
Yeah, I mean, what's the incredible quote? Tell no lies and claim no easy victories. I feel like having a presence in a place does not make any of us national organizations. It just means if we can't
Mhm.
actually mobilize and build power in a place, then it's paper thin, right? And I think that media justice has already got a track record of not being paper thin. It's like, again, what does it look like to build right relationship, to like show up to a place with our listening ears more than our solutions coming out of
Mhm.
our mouths that actually aren't tested or proven or in the time, place, and condition of the places that we're trying to organize in. I feel like a huge chunk of the work, friends, is just being real that we have a crisis in organizing. Folks don't remember how to do it. We haven't really
Mhm.
trained people on how to do it.
Yeah.
And certainly many of us are learning how to be humans with other humans again post a COVID reality, right? Many of us have not actually had to have uncomfortable conversations with people that aren't totally perfectly aligned with us ideologically, who probably get my pronouns wrong or might say colored in an inappropriate fashion. And do it without becoming so fragile that we actually can't get the organizing conversation done for the sake of collective action. Can I
Mm.
be honest today, right?
Please, please. Yeah.
I think we've got to get back to it, and we don't really know how to do it.
Mm.
Organizing in my tradition looks like a lot of listening and minimal speaking. It looks like listening for the questions that can actually get me to the impossibility of them saying no to what I need us collectively to do. It's not manipulation, it's actually the mass line, right? It's listening so that I can hear what is the pain point for this person and how might we collectively make that pain a distant memory in a way that can never happen again, right? So when we talk about naive optimism, to me, it is our developing strategies based on bad sound bites from people who cannot actually live into the contradictions of what it is to organize with regular ass people, right? What it
Mm.
looks like why my optimism is informed is because it's grounded in knowing that my neighbors actually really are ideologically on social and economic issues aligned with me. Where my neighbors also are is lacking in faith that movements of goodwill actually have enough power to do anything about it.
Mm.
Right. So now is a season where I can continue to fan the flames of their faith if I can show them that the power of the people cannot be stopped instead of just telling them there ain't no power like the power of the people. Right.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
show not tell time for regular ass people. You don't believe me. So let me say how I know that to be true. Right. 2024, we have a national election where despite many of our disdain for the two-party system, our disdain for the fact that neoliberalism is killing our people and has failed, our disdain for how far right both the Democratic Party is and how much further right just the total like abandonment of the conservatives of decent decency have become because they have allowed MAGA and indecency and evil to take over their party. Now, one can argue they were always evil, and I'm not even mad at you for that. But if we're making some scientific delineations between, just for the sake of like actual sound strategy of delineating between the never Trumpers and the GOP and the MAGA forces, that's an important delineation to make, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, despite all of that, many of us said, you know what, if it's between this neoliberal or these neoliberals and a fascist authoritarian takeover of the United States federal government in cahoots with a global authoritarian movement, then we'll take neoliberalism for 5,000, Alex, right? Many of us decided that. Some of us decided that, and we'll take neoliberalism for 5,000 and then we'll kick their ass in January, right? Some of us thought, yeah, we'll take neoliberalism, we'll kick their ass in January, and then we'll build our own working class power, and we'll replace them with the state infrastructure that we deserve, or frankly, other infrastructure beyond the state that's even more democratic than that, right? So we came together across our ideological differences to do that. We went to our neighbors and we said, this is the most important election of your lifetime. Get in where you fit in along this spectrum. And our neighbors said, no, right? They didn't say, we just don't trust the Democrats and we just don't trust the Republicans, but we trust movement. They said, we don't trust the Democrats, we don't trust the Republicans, and we don't have faith that movements can do anything about it, right? So I know that there has been a breach in trust and right relationship between our bases and our movements. Why am I then optimistic? Because Septima Clark often said that chaos creates an opportunity for creativity. And what I know is that in this season, we can be creative in how we repair that distrust, right? We can earn right relationship with regular ass people again. We can build a movement centered on what it looks like to build relationship with people that are like, yo, I would want to have a beer with that movement, right? We can make courage contagious, right? I'm not telling you not to be scared. I'm not telling you not to grieve. Some of you are coming really upset that the America you thought you lived in is actually a myth. Some of you are coming because you are the survivors of people who have always known it was a myth. So I have a lot of patience for the many ways that we might be arriving. But again, my optimism is grounded because what I know is that if we actually met the people where we're at, the people where they're at, made a commitment to not leaving them where we found them, we might fool around and be able, in this moment where neoliberalism has failed and authoritarianism and fascism has not consolidated fully, we might actually be able to get everything you want. So this is the season where you don't concede. This is the season where you say, you know what? We are the movement that believes that we will never, ever, ever serve another king. We are the kind of movement that believes that you deserve health care no matter where you live, what your zip code is, who you were born to. You deserve to live healthy and in a sustainable and equitable community. We are the people that get to say that racial justice is the norm, is the hegemony. We are the people that get to say we don't live in gender binaries, and we actually believe people should get to love whoever they love as long as it's consensual and not harmful, right? This is the time where we start to consolidate and popularize and make hegemonic the things that we've always wanted, because guess what? Now's the time we actually could win it. The wins in ourselves here. So I feel like, I hear my dad in my head being like, ain't nothing to it but to do it right now, y'all. Like, now's the time to shift from showing or telling people about our values and shift to actually cementing the strategies and tactical interventions that will see it so.
I am damn sure that everybody watching right now probably would be down to have a beer with you, Ash. So I think you're
I'm
you're
here for
modeling
it.
for us. You're modeling for us the kind of movement we need to be. And I'll leave you with this last question. Um, this has been a webinar series looking at the role that this tech oligarchy is playing in helping advance this authoritarian moment, right? And that's everything from the surveillance infrastructure to algorithmic control to resource extraction. Um, as a movement leader, as someone who is out in the world giving marching orders to different segments of the movement, this is the crew here that is trying to figure out what to do, and how to take responsibility for tech's role in undermining our communities and our democracy. So, what are your marching orders for us?
Yeah, man. I really, 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 as a person who lives in the state of Tennessee, and again, as a Southern supremacist, Stephen particularly knows that that is true of me. Um, the tech oligarchy is absolutely coming for political power in the South, and not just because it's cheap labor or because of the fight against unions. It's not just because we're a huge geography, so they can take up space. But they're coming because they know it's a perfect landscape to work at the intersection of the consolidation of their wealth and political power. Right. So that's another reason to take the South very seriously. I'm thinking about Elon and the AI farm that he's trying to build in West Tennessee right now. Right. So I can't underestimate the real critical importance of doing work at the intersection of media and tech and movement building for a lot of reasons. And if there were maybe three things I asked of you, it would be this. It would be one, that if you go to my neighborhood even, and you ask people if they don't want the surveillance state in their neighborhood, they would say, we absolutely want the surveillance state in our neighborhood. Like, we want those cop cameras right here. We ain't got nothing to hide, right? So it takes three more sentences to explain to my neighbors why police and the state having more surveillance apparatus in their communities is actually harmful to them, right? You don't believe that. Anybody frequent flying these days? If you're a frequent flyer, just put frequent flyer in the chat so I know I'm not by myself, right? Every time I go to Hartsfield Jackson, every time I go to LAX, I've been to LAX like 3 times in the last 2 weeks, right? Every time I'm in these airports and I go through security, right? There's this moment, I see YK Hong in my head right now, because every time I go, I see these little machines that say, like, hey, we can just take your picture real quick and just zoom you through. It's convenient for you, right? When actually it takes 2 seconds for me to show a actual human worker my ID, let them scan, do the weird shit that they do, and then get my ID back and go through TSA. It's not that deep, right? But it takes two more sentences, right? To be like, hey, man, it's really improper and unnecessary for them to be stealing your biometric data is actually a problem, right? I need
Mhm.
tech movement folks to make the absurdity more obvious to our people about what they're conceding, right? Because right now our people think it's about convenience and their own safety and security, and we don't have a good line around it, right?
Mhm.
So help me translate why it's actually a problem in a way that actually is an invitation for people and not just a burden and inconvenience for people. Because the right is getting it right. Right. The corporate Democrats who are benefiting off of it are also getting it right. And we don't yet have that. So, I hate to start with what people will whittle down to a narrative issue. I want to be very, very clear that I don't think it's just a narrative problem. I think it's a strategy problem. Right.
That's right. That's
So
right.
I would start there. Second thing I would say is that, we have been over the last 10 years like sort of trying to perfect our muscle memory around mass mobilization. And what I would offer is that we can't continue to be surprised and reactionary every time something happens with the Trump administration or their like on the state or local level by flooding the zone. Friends, they have told us what they're going to do. They have been very clear about who they are. Project 2025 is not confusing. It's arguably one of the most accessible strategies I've ever seen in my almost 40 years on this planet, right? Pay attention to it. Don't glorify it. Don't evangelize for them, right?
Mm.
But we actually know what their game plan is, both in terms of tech and everything else, right? So study to show yourselves approved, my friends, and let's get on the proactive good foot that builds momentum and gets us on the offense and both blocking their interventions and building the alternatives to it, right? And the next opportunity that I know to mass mobilize that's going to happen, in a big, big tent is this No Kings mobilization that's happening on June 14th. So if you are a member of a community or an organization that can get down with that, let's go. And let's continue to build momentum around that so that we can build the biggest, baddest, broadest, coolest, courageous front against this authoritarian regime and the Broligarchy and the tech stuff that is like actually making it possible. And third, like last but not least, what I would offer is that we have to be honest about what a strategy looks like when the fascists and authoritarians in political power actually don't give a shit about legal niceties, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way that we protested against corporate Democrats who actually still cared about the Constitution might need to look a little different when we're fighting people who don't believe in any rules, right? Who believe that they can do whatever they want with impunity. A lot of big words for just they can do whatever they want and get away with it, right? We need to be savvy here. And if folks like Elon Musk and Bezos and all the rest of them think that they can do these things, they can buy a government or governments without consequence, we need to, I hear Frederick Douglass in my head saying power concedes nothing without a demand. And then I hear Charlene Carruthers in my head where she said in Unapologetic, her book, that power concedes nothing without an organized demand. And I agree with that, but I would add in conclusion that power concedes nothing without an organized demand and a consequence. And I think we need to be the consequence. Towards that conclusion, I would say, I get it. Many of y'all probably don't buy Teslas anyway. Shout out to the Tesla takedown team, though. Y'all are doing the Lord's work, right? That's important. We should keep putting pressure and like supporting and amplifying the work of Tesla takedown. But for those of us that couldn't have afforded a fucking Tesla anyway, right? There's other ways that we can be going for folks like Elon Musk, right? And I threw a temper tantrum on the internet today because people keep saying that Elon is leaving DC and Doge. He's not. A step back is not a step down. He's very much still going to be an active part of the government. And even if he was stepping down, y'all, he still has enough. He's the richest man in the world. He still has enough money to buy the foreseeable elections, right? For in perpetuity, right? So the reality is that even if he was stepping down, which he's not, we would still need to keep our eye on the prize that he is a target of ours, right? I'll say it. I know it's probably not strategic to say that under a fascist state, but it is true, right? So I want to give you this example in conclusion. Did you know, you heard Steven, I think, was talking about Starlink earlier, right? And Starlink, for folks that maybe don't know or not tech savvy like me, like Starlink is just a satellite company, right? It's a big satellite company that Elon Musk is benefiting from, right? It's his money, right? And so did you know, are there any, if you've got a T-Mobile plan, can you tell me, can you just say, yeah, I've got a T-Mobile plan in the chat? I just want to see how many of us are rocking with T-Mobile. So did you know that T-Mobile is actually in partnership with Starlink? Did you know that? Did you know that that Starlink contract is up in September? Did you know that? Did you know that like the CEO of T-Mobile, as I understand it, has in the past been a vocal critic of the Trump administration? Can you imagine what it might be for people who either work in the T-Mobile call centers down south, that the CWA members that have been organizing T-Mobile plants? Can you imagine what it would be for people who have T-Mobile plans to be like, hey, T-Mobile, we're not even mad at you and we're not going to hold you, but it's your ass if you continue that Starlink contract in September. In fact, I'm thinking about moving to a Verizon or a AT&T or somewhere where CWA actually is organizing workers, right? Imagine what it might do to his profit for T-Mobile to not continue that contract. And imagine what it might tell other cell phone providers and internet providers that are dependent on Starlink if our constituency, if the power of our people organizes to be like, we actually don't rock with people who rock with Starlink, right? So if you have the excuse that you don't have a Tesla to give back, like, some of our actress friends, or if you're like, yo, man, the Tesla takedown is beyond my tax bracket, you might be paying $100 a month or whatever to have a T-Mobile phone. You still actually could do something that could take wealth out of the pocket of an Elon Musk. So I just want you to be thinking about like, okay, I don't want to hear what you can't do in this season. I want to know what you can do. I want to know that you've looked into the multiple ways that these billionaires are making their profit at our expense and buying our government, and say like, oh, this is the faithful next step that I can take to move us from where we are to where we ought to be. And if you can do that, then I can meet you there. I'm really excited
Ooh,
to.
we're gonna meet you there, Ashley. Thank you so, so much. And Heard, we need to we got work to do. We got work to do. We need to connect the dots. We need to turn out to the No Kings mobilization on June 14th, and we need to keep our eyes on the prize. Elon Musk has not gone anywhere. He is still very much a target. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I'm gonna pass it over to my colleague Rumsha. Take us on.
Thank you so much, Ashley. That was so rich. And here to make the conversation even richer is Irma Shaf Bahar, Executive Director of 18 Million Rising. Over the last 20 years, Irma has been helping build people power movements in the US and abroad. At 18 Million Rising, she's organizing AAPI solidarity across immigrant, economic, racial justice, and LGBTQ plus gender justice movements. Irma, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Ashley, for all your incredible words of wisdom and reminders that we as organizers need to do on the ground.
Irma, I am so grateful that you're here, so honored that you're here, especially in the context of the last month or so, where we've seen 18 million rising, understand the consequences of taking principled, bold stances in your work. Particularly your Palestinian solidarity work has come under scrutiny from a funder who chose to pull funding based on a solidarity statement that you all did, and a lot of the solidarity work with Palestine you all do. This marks a shift in this escalated repression that progressive forces have faced. And at the same time, I've been deeply inspired by the way that 18 Million Rising has chosen to face the moment, not by retrenching, but by stepping forward. Can you share more about why that is the stance you all chose to take in this moment?
Yeah, thanks, Rumsha. So for folks who don't know, 18 million rising in the beginning of the year, end of January, we actually got $250,000 of already committed grant revoked, specifically because of one Palestinian solidarity statement that we published in October of 2023. That's about a quarter of our budget that got revoked. I was called in, and met with three different executives on a webinar with a 2-day notice, and the decision was already made. Of course, I fought back and asked for more reasoning, and it really was because of one solidarity statement that they misinterpreted. We know that actually sharing our story then and also now is not just about recounting setback of funds that got taken away. We know that us telling our story, we went public and naming that it was the Wellspring Foundation with a story from the Chronicle of Philanthropy, that we had to not be silent because it was not an option. Telling our story, we know, was our stand against fear. And I was scared shitless to even think about telling our story. One, because we also needed to make sure we did our risk assessment, not based on just 18MR on backlash, but also for Arab, Palestinian, Muslim-led organizations. If we told our story, is this going to impact our comrades? But we knew that we wanted to call and uphold justice and solidarity for all, especially for Palestine. So in HNMR, we refused to back down. Not to say that it was easy, especially in this political climate, but for me, as someone who found my political home in 2006 in Seattle, I'm with the National Democratic Movement of the Philippines, and I was taught that being an internationalist, being in solidarity, wasn't just a slogan, it's a practice. And we know, and folks say our liberation is tied with the liberation of Palestine. What does that mean? Right? So that theory actually means it should be lived solidarity. And for me, I've witnessed and I feel so humbled to have Palestinian comrades that are my chosen fam from 2006 when I joined the movement have shown up hella hard, fearless, unwavering in their commitment. And that's the follow, and that's the strength that we follow in 18MR and the strength that we draw from. So we know that when a funder like the Wellspring Foundation takes away this funding from us, we it was a choice, right, in terms of choosing between our values or our resources. So we see for what it is, right? It was an attempt for them to isolate us. It was an attempt for Wellspring and these other foundations to silence us. It was an attempt for them to break the bonds of solidarity that actually makes our movement strong. But as a Filipino, as Asian Americans in 18MR, many of us come from homelands that have been occupied, bombed, colonized by US imperialism. So we know what it means, right, to actually be in the receiving end of violence and erasure. So if those bombs were dropping in the Philippines, that also was paid by our US tax dollars, I would want my comrades, I would need my community to show up for my Filipino people, right? And that's the standard that we at 18MR hold ourselves to. And this is why at 18MR we refuse not just to back down, but understand that as repression is escalating, it's a sign that our movement, and this is actually something to be both proud and understand that our impact, right, that our solidarity is so powerful enough to threaten the status quo, right? So in these moments, the only real choice is to double down, to fight even harder, right? To lead with our values and principles. And because our liberation is collective, and for everyone that's in the webinar, just like what Ashley's saying, what y'all are saying is like there is no choice right now but to join the struggle, right? This is our moment to lead with principle, to show up for each other and make clear that our movements can't be bought. Sorry, Wellspring. We can't be bullied. Fuck that. We can't be broken, right? And that our solidarity is our strength, and together we move forward. That's our charge. That's our moment. Let's show up, right? Let's fight and let's win together. And this is not actually, how people are like, oh, in this political moment right now, it's been like that. You know what I'm saying? So for me, solidarity is like our protection. And for us, telling our story was, for us, there's still like there aren't people who are flooding and trying to give us money post our story. If anything, I think H&M probably isolated ourselves, but it's a call in to be like, yeah, we need communities, allies, and funders to stand with us, and we're not backing down on our principles and values because that's what we want you to support us in, right? And we're not trying to be silent about that.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate that so much. It reminds me of Audre Lorde when she says, your silence will not protect you.
That's
And
right.
you all are modeling that so much for our movement. One
Yeah.
last question for you, Irma. As a leader of a progressive organization, you're trying to move this agenda alongside a broader agenda. And I'm wondering, what do you think people like those in our webinar tonight who may be animated by tech's role in destroying our society, and weakening our democracy, what is your directive to us about what we need to be doing right now in order to build the kind of resistance that helps drive our vision of a liberated future?
Wow, such a powerful, easy question, huh? And an important question, right? I feel like we do have the answers, but this question is hard to answer without really thinking about those who come before us and also those who are still with us, right? Like I think about the Blank Panther Party. I think of Yuri Kochiyama. I think of our live trans leaders like Miss Major. I think of Lada from, the Arab Resource and Organizing Center. Like we have living movement leaders that are still here that we can draw strength from. And they're the ones that also reminds us that resistance is not just saying no to injustice, right? It actually is also imagining, living, and taking action. So I'm going to name like 5 things, right? Some of it might be a little cheesy, but cheesy is good, right? Because you need a little flavor in the movement. But I want to just say that my leadership actually is grounded in gratitude, right? Gratitude to me is actually a prayer for me. Yori Kachiyama actually saw gratitude not as passive, but as a form of resistance and strength. She found power in every relationship. And for me, I actually try to start my day in the beginning and the end to actually name what I'm thankful for, especially those people who are in struggle with me. One, why that helps, if I don't do that or if we don't remember to actually be in gratitude, we forget about the people who are in our lives. We forget that we are actually lucky that we're eating that meal We forget that actually, practicing gratitude actually is a radical act that will keep our hearts open and our spirits strong. So that's one. The second one, Miss Major has told us, Black trans movement leader, she always says, take care of yourself, baby, because no one else will do it for you, right? People have been going back and forth of, oh, self-care is so bourgeois, it's so selfish. Incorrect. Self-care in the framework in collective care actually means listening deeply to both our body and our spirit when we need to rest, when we need to seek joy, when we actually need to nurture our resilience, right? This is not selfish. Some people were taught that this was selfish, but actually it's necessary, right? In the long haul. I've been in the movement for about 20 years. We've lost people through cancer, through healthcare, through burnout, through exhaustion and sicknesses, right? But when we honor ourselves also as whole beings, as not just activists and organizers, but as a child of an immigrant or as a partner or as a parent of a fur baby, right? Or is part as having chosen family, we actually are reminding ourselves that we are reclaiming our humanity and we're building strength to continue to fight with clarity and with compassion. And the third one is that we know we can't do this alone. Community is both our shield and our sanctuary. So we have to really nurture those relationships. And at the heart of all this, I started talking about internationalism and solidarity. Solidarity is the thread that binds us together, right? And our struggles are interconnected. What's happening in Gaza is not distance, it's part of the same fight against imperialism here in the belly of the beast, right? Solidarity means more than words. Again, it means action, it means presence, it means sometimes sacrifice. It requires us, like Ashley saying, listening deeply, right? Not just telling or strategizing without listening to folks on the ground, to learn from each other's struggles and to stand together even when it's difficult or unpopular, right? And the last but not least, the most important, and this is actually what Stephen and Ashley was talking about, above all, number five, we must be bold and daring. We must organize, we must fight and build movements that leave no one behind. These crises of genocide, mass deportations, police brutality, the rise of fascism, the demand that we organize and resist with everyone we have is needed, right? This is not the time for caution. This is not the time for, us waiting, like how some funders are saying, oh, we're waiting to see what's going to happen. Right now is a time for being courageous, for principled resistance, for boldness. And we know that it means acts of bravery, right? And not alone. We need to do the painstaking work of building leaders at all levels. We have to build a big tent. So let me be clear, and I know I have 1 minute. I see someone coming in. Being bold and daring means that we have to commit to inviting the masses to join us, right? To expand, to welcome, and to organize on the scale that matches the urgency of this moment. Because liberation demands that we do grow. Stephen talked about the big tent, the big we. That means us reaching out. That means building the biggest tent because our power lives in our relationships. And we need to nurture our relationships and our communities with care and build our collective resistance together and take responsibility for each other's liberation. And last, this work is hard, but together we can make the old world right now a new world that is centered in genuine liberation and freedom.
Mm. Wow. Irma Shaf Bahar, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Can
Thank
y'all
you for
show
having
some love?
me.
Thank you, Irma. Oh my God. Can y'all show some love to Irma? Also some love to Ashley for sharing their incredible wisdom with us. Um, how are you feeling after that, Rimsho? What's going to be sitting with you? Curious.
Oh, so many things. So many things. I'm feeling so energized and moved by the things that both Irma and Ashley shared with us. How are you doing?
I mean, so much that I've been taking in. I mean, Irma, solidarity is our strength. With Ashley, I think the call to really like to be bold and building the larger we. by facing the world that we're trying to change, like real, regular ass people that we got to be out there building with. Which makes me actually think about the work that our movement building team has been doing, that kind of like spending more time listening than actually talking. Our organizers have been out on the road, meeting with groups all over the country. We just had some folks in Minneapolis this week, in Memphis previously. Um, and yeah, I'm thinking about all of that, and I feel ready. I feel ready to meet the moment, and feel even more inspired with what our two speakers offered us this evening. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling. Okay, so we've spent this series helping make sense of the tech oligarchy's rise with all of us here, and now it's time to take in some of like the directives that we've gotten from our brilliant speakers, and it's time to help grow the people who can fight this tech oligarchy with us.
Exactly. And so to do that, we want to share this brand new resource with you. You'll see it on your screen. Someone will drop the link in the chat. This brand new resource that we are releasing called WTF, The Rise of the Tech Broligarchy, a political education toolkit. So you can bring this series to your community. And in particular, I want to shout out Christine Pang, who led the creation of this curriculum. This toolkit includes activities and information that can help you continue this conversation outside of this webinar. So continue the conversations with your aunties, people at the laundromat, youth leaders, whoever in your neighborhood group you want to connect with on this content. And the point of the toolkit is to bring more people into understanding tech oligarchy. In the toolkit, you'll see 2 accessible community activities that will help people learn some of the lessons from this webinar series, but it's offered in a simpler format so you can facilitate it in your own community.
Yep, that's right. So here on the screen, we're going to show you just some snapshots of what the toolkit looks like. To that point Ashley was making earlier, we got to keep our eyes on the prize. So we've got a little game in there on like the faces of the tech oligarchy so that we know not only who these figures are, but what their names are, what they look like, what they're trying to do in our communities. So this is what it looks like. Again, accessible activities you can be bringing through the many different spaces that you navigate. So as we say goodbye to the WTF series for now, here are the 3 things as tradition in every single webinar. We've had like calls to action. We've actually had a few more that have been added on top of that just in conversation here today. But here are the 3 things that we're asking you to do. The first is download the WTF toolkit. This is a resource. This is a tool that you can use, and download it, set up a meeting with your folks and try it out and let us know what you think. Um, the second thing we're asking folks to do in terms of taking action is join Media Justice. Join us in a couple different ways. You can stay connected with us on social media. Just search Media Justice across all the social media channels. You can also join our action list. We dropped the link in the chat, or we'll be dropping a link here pretty soon on where you can join our action list if you want to get information for the next thing we're working on or when we might be in your community. That's a good place to go. And you can also become a donor if you've really appreciated the webinar series and have gotten a lot out of it. Please like go and donate to Media Justice and help us resource this work so we can continue to do it. And the last thing, the very, very, very last thing is we have a survey. Many of you have actually joined us for multiple webinars. And so we'd love to hear what you thought about it. And deepening analysis for us is going to be a core part of our media justice strategy moving forward. So we want to know how we're doing, where we're meeting the mark, where we might be like a little bit off. And so your feedback honestly would be such a gift. And because a little innocent bribery never hurt anyone, if you fill it out, you will be entered to win a free copy of Ruha Benjamin's book, Imagination, a Manifesto, which feels like very appropriate given the conversation today and where we need to go. We have more than one copy to give out, so you know your chances are pretty good. So we dropped the link for the survey. I promise you it's going to take 2 minutes or less to fill it out. And again, it helps our team receive your feedback, understand how we can improve our programs at Media Justice. And before we go, all of our recordings and viewing guides, I saw someone in the chat say, I got to go back and catch up with the recordings. The good news is all of the recordings are linked in the Media Justice YouTube channel. We're dropping a link in the chat. And thank you all for joining this final installment of WTF, The Rise of the Tech Broligarchy. What you've seen in terms of the people on screen is just the tip of the iceberg. And behind these webinars, there is a really dedicated team helping to transform this like complex information into accessible knowledge that powers our movements. So I want to recognize Marco and Daniela from our communications team who've amplified these messages to reach thousands. Jack, whose technical hand and great visuals made these complex topics more digestible. They also made our topics really fly. So thank you. Our fellow hosts who have guided us through each of the webinars. Etang, Dulani, Danny, Brandon, and Myasia. We got a deep bench of people who can host these conversations, and they've each brought their unique insights and passions. And also to my co-host who was with me in this one here today, special gratitude to Rumsha, who coordinated this entire series and connected all of the pieces that needed to be connected. We're also deeply, deeply indebted to the brilliant minds, the brilliant people who, when we reached out, they said yes to us and came on to share their expertise with us. That's everyone from Irma Shahbajar, who was with us here today, and Ashley Henderson, Kashawn Pearson, who's fighting the expansion of Musk data centers in Memphis, Paramita Shah defending immigrant rights, Erie Meyer, a former CFPB chief technologist who resigned in protest of like what Doge was doing and helping us see what's happening inside of our government agencies. And so many more people who actually joined us to share their expertise with us. And most importantly, I want to thank all of you, everyone who has tuned in, who has asked questions, who has dropped emojis, who has shared their insights in the chat and stayed with us throughout this journey. The last thing I'll say is this tech oligarchy, they're betting on our confusion. They're betting on our division. They're betting on our despair. They're counting on us feeling overwhelmed by their wealth and influence. But what they don't understand is that throughout history, liberation has never come from those with the most resources. It's come from communities who have refused to be divided, who shared knowledge, who organized in the face of impossible odds. So while this series may be ending, our collective resistance is just beginning. The connections we've built, the analysis we've shared, the strategies we've explored will continue to fuel us as we work together. Because while they may have billions in their bank accounts, we have something more powerful, each other. So thank you for being part of this community. Now let's take what we've learned and use it to build the world we deserve. Thank y'all. Thanks for hanging with us.